Before your GI switches your biologic, there are 4 things they should check first, and most patients don't know to ask for any of them. Hi, I'm Kate, and today we're talking about loss of response to biologics and the 4 clinical checks that should happen before anyone reaches for a new drug. Because if you or someone you love is being told their biologic has stopped working, this information could change that conversation completely. Now, I remember distinctly the phone call from my son's GI. His biologic isn't working and it's time to switch. My gut reaction as a mum was like fear, like, oh no, what's happened? What have we done wrong? But what I knew as a naturopath was that there were some questions forming in my head. And I actually also realized that most families probably don't know that there's a clinical framework to push back with and why that felt really urgent to me. Here's what the research actually shows. Loss of response to a biologic is not always true pharmacological failure. A 2012 landmark paper by Ben Horan and Chowers and subsequent work published in Gastroenterology established that secondary loss of response has distinct testable mechanisms: low drug levels, anti-drug antibodies, or a cause that has nothing to do with inflammation at all. Switching drugs without running these checks first isn't just premature, it can mean a patient cycles through their options actually faster than they need to, which is not ideal. The same middle path here is not choosing between your biologic and a new one, it's asking for the data before that decision is made. What we need to ask for is we need drug level testing. Trough drug levels tell you whether the biologic is actually present in therapeutic concentrations. Low levels often explain loss of response before anything else does. A patient or family member whose levels came back subtherapeutic, what that finding changed? Anti-drug antibody testing. The body can develop antibodies against the biologic itself, which actually works at neutralizing it. And this is a different problem requiring a different solution than simply switching drugs. The distinction between low antibodies versus high antibodies, and that was what was important for my son's pathway. He didn't actually not have enough drug in the system. It's just that there was antibodies present. Also, we need to rule out non-inflammatory pain. Sometimes the person might get symptoms that feel like a flare, cramping, urgency, fatigue, but they can actually be driven by IBS type mechanisms, even bile acid malabsorption, or even a stricture, not actually active inflammation. And a biologic switch won't that make any difference to those, obviously. So a clinical example of this is where the person is having those symptoms, but their calprotectin or CRP, they were actually normal. And that told us something about what was really going on. Another thing to make sure of is to reassess disease phenotype. So Crohn's can change its behavior over time. A drug that was right for luminal disease may not be the right class for someone who's developed fistulizing or stricturing pattern, and that's a phenotype question, not just a drug question. When my son landed after these checks were actually done, there was not a switch, but optimization needed to happen. And what that brought him in terms of time on a drug that was working was invaluable. What I tell families in clinic now when they call me the day after a time to switch appointment, the 3 words to say to their GI. The realistic picture. Sometimes a switch is the right call, but it should be the conclusion of a process, not the shortcut around one. If you take one thing from today, let it be this. Drug levels, anti-drug antibodies, inflammatory versus non-inflammatory symptoms, and disease phenotype, those are the 4 things to ask your GI about by name before any switch is made. This isn't a substitute for your GI's advice. It's the conversation that makes that advice better. Download the question sheet in the description. Share this with someone who needs it. And I'll see you in the next video. Have a beautiful day.